For a moment, imagine that your mind is no longer pulled by invisible pressures, no longer weighed down by thoughts that keep running without stopping. Imagine that your heart no longer curls up in worry and begins to move in a gentle quiet. I am Emmet Fox, and in this moment, I invite you to step into a space that does not belong to noise or chaos, but belongs to you, to the part of you that has never been wounded. In a world where people are constantly surrounded by work responsibilities and very real fears, many have come to believe that peace is a luxury that only arrives when everything is finally in order. Yet there is a truth that rises above every circumstance, a truth that does not belong to time. Peace has always been living in you, like a quiet flame, never extinguished, simply waiting for you to turn back and notice it. The silence you are searching for does not come from the outside. It comes from a sacred place within that I call the home of the divine, where all confusion melts away like mist in the morning sun. There you do not have to prove anything, you do not have to be strong. You do not have to hide or defend yourself. There is only one thing waiting for you, the simple truth that you have never been abandoned. You have never walked alone, even when life made you believe that you did. In that inner home, mental health is not a rare gift for a chosen few. It is the natural state that appears when your mind turns back in the right direction. I want you to see this clearly. Peace is not a privilege. It is not a matter of luck. It does not depend on how anyone treats you. It is only covered over by the false beliefs you have held on to for many years. When you step into the home within, those beliefs lose their power. They do not disappear with a loud noise. They gently dissolve in the simple awareness that the divine is living in you here and now. Let this picture touch you. A room with no noise and no darkness, only light as soft as a breath. And in that light, you are standing there, not judged, not demanded of, simply invited to rest. In this moment, you do not need to understand everything, and you do not need to fix everything. You only need to take one more step into the truth that peace is your very nature. When you allow this to become real, something very deep begins to shift at once. It does not start from the outside world, it starts from the very center of your being. And from that place, this journey begins. When I speak about the inner home, many people imagine an abstract picture, something too distant to touch. But the truth is much closer. That home is not a temple made of stone, not a place you must reach through ritual or religion, but a quiet region in the soul where the presence of the divine is always waiting for you, the same way the breath waits for us no matter how frantic we become. After many years guiding those who live under heavy pressure, I have seen that what breaks people is not the events outside, but the beliefs they build inside about themselves. The belief that they are weak, abandoned, not good enough, unable to change, or unworthy of peace. But these beliefs are not truth. They are old stories repeated so often that people mistake them for their real nature. The inner home is the place where these stories lose power. It is where you see that the things that once made you tremble are only thoughts that have been fed for too long. They are strong not because they are true, but because you have listened to them too many times. I remember Thomas, a 38-year-old man from Boston, who believed that burnout was the life sentence written for him. He changed jobs 3 times in 4 years, tried meditation, tried medicine, tried changing environments, but the exhaustion followed him like a shirt he could not take off. One day, when I asked him what he was truly afraid of, he stayed silent for a long moment and then whispered that what he feared most was not work, but the feeling of being invisible, not good enough, and always behind everyone else. I told him that this was not truth. It was only a room he had lived in for too long, familiar to the point that he mistook it for home. When he began to see that this was only an old belief, he could step into the real home, the place where he did not need to prove his worth, only recognize that his worth had been with him since the moment he first existed. This is as true for you as it was for him. You do not have to carry the weight of years of self-doubt. You do not need to wait for life to grant permission before you can have peace. The inner home is never closed. There is no requirement to enter, no standard to meet. You do not need to be perfect, strong, knowledgeable, or free from every mistake. You only need to be willing to look within instead of endlessly moving outside. And when you do that, you will see something important. Every disturbance you thought was a real problem is actually the effect of a false belief repeated for too long. These disturbances are not truth. They are not destiny. They are not a sentence. They are surface images. The issue is not whether you are strong or weak, but which thoughts you have given power to. Which thought in you says you must hold everything together? Which thought says you are unworthy? Which thought whispers that you will always stay the same? Once you see that these are only echoes and not truth, you have already walked half the journey back to your inner home. There you do not need to push fear away. You only need to see that fear is not your master. It is only a temporary guest, and you have the right to gently ask it to leave. When you enter that home with humility and faith, the things that once seemed impossible to change begin to dissolve according to a natural law. They do not fade because you fight them. They fade because they have no material to survive in the light of your awareness. People are not healed by force, but by the gentle truth they allow to touch them. And that truth always whispers that within you there is a place untouched by time, unharmed by the words of others, unlowered by failure, unstained by mistakes. A place that knows only one thing, that you belong to the divine, and therefore you have never lost your peace. Today, before we move deeper, I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself this. Have you believed that you must change your circumstances before you can have peace, while peace has been waiting for you inside all along? If you are feeling this, let me know you are here with a gentle response. Are you hearing me? When I say that the body is the translation of consciousness, I do not say it as a poetic metaphor, but as a truth that operates quietly in every moment of life. The body does not create problems. It only responds. It responds to what you believe, what you fear, what you speak, and what you repeat every day. Many people have lived most of their lives without realizing that the body is the most honest mirror of the soul. It does not lie. It does not deceive you. It only expresses in form what you have accepted in the mind. I have met many who believed their body was betraying them. They said their body was weak, fragile, disobedient. But the body betrays no one. It only follows the instructions we unknowingly give it. When you keep calling yourself a person who is easily stressed, the body becomes tense. When you describe yourself with words like tired, exhausted, overwhelmed, the body receives them as a manual. The body is a silent servant. It never argues. It never resists. It only receives commands. And those commands rarely come from grand thoughts, but from the small sentences you repeat without noticing. I remember Sarah, a woman in Texas. She often said she could not sleep, saying it every night, as if it was an unchanging truth of her life. One day she asked me why meditation, medicine, and a new bedroom environment still did not help. I asked her what she thought she was doing each time she said, "I cannot sleep." She looked at me confused. I told her that she was praying. She was giving a declaration with complete conviction because she said it with absolute certainty. Her body was only answering that prayer. She was silent for a long moment. That was when everything started to shift. Not because I helped her fix her body, but because she began to fix her language about herself. When she changed, "I cannot sleep" to "sleep" comes to me more easily each day, the body began to turn like a boat, adjusting its direction toward light after drifting too long in darkness. This is not magic. This is law. This is the operation of consciousness in physical form. The body is never the master. It is only the servant. It does not create beliefs. It only reflects the beliefs you already carry. Many people tell me they do not intend to diminish themselves. They only describe what is happening. I understand that. But what is happening is only the result of what has happened inside. The way you describe your body is the law you declare over yourself. And that law will operate whether you notice it or not. When you say, "I am weak," you are placing into the body an invitation to weakness. When you say, "I am always sick," you are creating it as a default image in consciousness. The body simply obeys. It does not know how to resist or compare. It only knows how to listen. That is why I often say that speech is the most subtle form of prayer. You do not need to kneel. You do not need ritual or ceremony. Every sentence leaving your lips is a command sent into the deepest regions of your consciousness, and from there into the body. And because consciousness is the root, and the body is only the branch, every word you speak becomes either nourishment or drought for that branch. When you understand this, you begin to see that your power is greater than you ever imagined. You do not need to fight your body, force it, punish it, or demand that it change at once. What you need is to change the inner voice. Change the way you name yourself. Change the way you describe what you experience. This does not deny truth. It only denies the exaggeration of fear. I have seen many lives change direction simply by changing language. A man who always said he lived in stress changed his words to, "I am learning to live more gently each day." Within 6 months, his emotional health shifted noticeably, not because he forced himself to be calm, but because he stopped planting into his body the orders that kept it tense. A woman who always said, "I cannot take this anymore," began saying, "I am growing through this challenge." With that change, her breath slowed, her heartbeat steadied, and she found solutions to what had frightened her for so long. I share these stories so you understand that your strength does not lie in how much control you have over the body, but in how you direct the mind. When you see the body as an enemy, you will always fight. When you see it as a friend, trying to tell you something, you will listen. And when you listen with respect, the body softens. It does not want to oppose you. It wants to move with you. Sometimes, the symptoms you fear most are only signals the body sends to remind you that you have wandered too far from your inner home. It only wants you to return. It does not condemn you. It only calls out for help. But when you change your words, your beliefs, and the way you call yourself, you give the body a new map. From there, the body adjusts and turns like a garden reviving when the gardener finally waters it with what it truly needs. And now I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself this. In recent days, what words have you used to describe yourself? Are you naming your body with terms that make it contract or with sentences that help it open? That question may be the beginning of a very deep shift within you. When you begin to turn inward, you will notice a quiet place you have forgotten for a long time. Not because it disappeared, but because the noise of life has covered it. The noise comes from repeated worries, unfinished decisions, unnamed fears and words spoken to you years ago that you still allow to echo in your mind. But the quiet is still there, like a lake waiting for a windless morning to reflect the true sky. And in that quiet, you begin to see something important. The life moving within you is not something you must create. It is already there. It is carrying you through every breath. It is proof that the divine has never left you. What you need is not to create more strength, but to release the layers of projection that made you forget the strength you already have. When you sit down in silence, you are not doing anything complicated. You are doing what the soul has long wished for, which is to return and listen. Listen to your breath as a small hymn of life. Listen to the rhythm of your heart as a reminder that you are always supported. Listen to the space between two thoughts where there is no worry, no analysis, no judgment. In that space you begin to meet truth, and truth is not loud. Truth does not push you to race. It only invites you to be still. Every morning I encourage you to practice what I call 2 minutes of lifting the mind. Only 2 minutes. Sit down, place your hand on your chest, close your eyes, and whisper, "The life in me is stronger than every fear." Let that sentence touch you, not as an affirmation forcing you to be strong, but as a gentle reminder that you are sustained by a source greater than yourself. Many people think spiritual practice has to be long, deep, and full of technique. But the soul does not need technique. It needs honesty. And that honesty appears when you let yourself stop. When you admit that you are tired, that you have tried too long, that you need a place where nothing demands anything of you. And that is the moment you step into the inner home. In that home, you do not have to try to be peaceful. You only let go of what tightens around you. You release the words of self-blame that have followed you for years. You allow yourself to be present even for 2 small minutes. And the wonder of these 2 minutes is that they begin to change the direction of your entire day. They reset your mind. They help you remember that you are not living by your own strength. They remind you that there is a spiritual order moving in you, no matter how chaotic life appears outside. When you practice 2 minutes of lifting the mind each day, you are planting a special seed, the seed of awareness. This seed does not bloom instantly. There is no immediate miracle. But over time, it becomes a new path in your consciousness. The old path leads you into anxiety. The new path leads you into peace. Each time you repeat, "The life in me is stronger than every fear," you make that path clearer, smoother, and easier to walk. One day you will find yourself stepping onto that path naturally without thinking. That is real change. But there is something I want you to remember. You do not need to wait for proof to believe that this home is real. You do not need to feel peaceful before believing that peace belongs to you. If you wait for proof, you are making the outer world the judge of your inner life. You are saying that truth only has value when circumstances approve it. But truth does not wait for circumstances. Truth comes before circumstances. Truth is the cause, and proof is the effect. Many people tell me they will believe they are peaceful when they feel peaceful. But emotions are waves. Truth is the sea. Waves change every day. The sea does not change. When you know you belong to the sea, the waves no longer frighten you. So let truth lead first. Proof will follow. When you say, "The life in me is stronger than every fear," you are not saying it to convince anyone. You are not saying it to change your emotion instantly. You are saying it to place yourself into the right current of truth, to help your mind remember what it forgot, to let your body respond in the direction of healing, and to give your soul the space it needs to breathe. And you will see that the more you practice, the more clearly you feel the difference. Not because the world outside changes at once, but because the way you look at the world changes. Not because every worry disappears, but because they no longer defeat you. Not because life becomes lighter, but because you become deeper. And when you become deeper, life no longer tosses you around as it once did. That is the gift of quiet. That is the gift of 2 minutes of lifting the mind. That is the gift of entering the inner home where the sacred life has always been waiting for you to return. There is something I always want people to understand clearly, that the law of awareness is not an abstract philosophy, but a principle that governs life. Whatever your thoughts nourish, your experience will follow. This is not magic, and it is not punishment. It is simply the natural operation of the human mind. When you place your attention on fear again and again, fear grows. When you let your mind be pulled by dark images, those images slowly become real in your awareness. But when you place light first, darkness has no place to hold on. You do not need to fight darkness to make it disappear. You only need to turn on the light. This is the first principle of peace. People suffer not because they lack strength, but because they forget that the light is within them from the beginning. I have met many who spend their lives fighting what they think are their enemies: anxiety, insecurity, anger, disappointment. But the more they fight, the larger those things grow, because fighting is also a kind of agreement that the thing you fear has power. The more you resist, the more you tell your mind that the object you fear is worth fearing. That is why I always say that the path of healing is not a battle but an awakening. Awakening means recognizing that darkness has no authority unless you give it authority. It is like a room where no one has turned on the light. It cannot push you away. It cannot harm you. It only waits for a single spark. And that spark is right understanding. When you look at fear and say, "I do not grant you authority in my mind," you deny it with a gentleness that holds great power. This is the denial I want you to understand. It is not denying reality. It is not ignoring emotion. It is not pretending everything is fine. True denial means refusing to give fear any more fuel, refusing to let it become the center of your life, refusing to let it define who you are. When you deny with calmness, you reclaim your mind. And after denial comes affirmation. Affirmation is not forcing yourself. It is not repeating positive sentences to convince someone, even yourself. Affirmation is opening the door. It is allowing truth to enter. It is placing yourself into the rightful order of the sacred flow. When I speak of affirmation, I want you to know that you are not creating something new. You are recognizing what has always been true. When you say peace belongs to me, you are not demanding peace. You are acknowledging your nature. When you say the divine is guiding me, you are not expecting someone outside to intervene. You are returning to the order already present in your soul. The mind often clings to what frightens it because fear gives it the illusion of control. But the path of peace does not lie in control. It lies in gentle release. Release does not mean giving up. Release means refusing to keep building power for what harms you. Release means no longer repeating the old story. Release means placing an end to the long chain of self-criticism. I once guided a young woman named Lisa, who believed she had to be strong before she could have peace. She fought her anxiety every day, as if fighting an enemy. But the more she fought, the more exhausted she became. One day I asked her, "If a room is filled with darkness, can you push the darkness out with your strength?" She shook her head. I asked again, "Then what do you do?" She was quiet for a moment and answered, "I turn on the light." I smiled. That was the answer she had been searching for all those years. No one pushes darkness out. One simply turns on the light. And for that reason, the practice of this part is simple. Whenever you feel fear pressure or the sense of being swept away, pause for a moment and whisper, "This has no power over me." Say it as if gently placing a hand on your heart to remind yourself that you do not belong to that darkness. It is only a passing thought. It is not you. Then follow with the next affirmation, "The light of the divine is guiding me." 2 steps: denial and affirmation, gentle yet powerful. When you practice this repeatedly, your mind will begin to recognize a new direction. It stops running after old reactions. It begins to pause to watch and then to step into the light. You do not need to believe that you are strong. You only need to believe that light is stronger than darkness. And that has always been true. Now let me ask you something, and I hope you truly pause for a moment to feel it. Have you been fighting too much because you believed you had to do everything on your own? If any part of you sees yourself in this question, leave a comment or simply write the number 1, so I know you are walking with me on this journey. When you begin to understand the law of thought, you will realize that every great change in life is created by small but steady practices. Not by dramatic pushes or big decisions, but by spiritual seeds planted day after day. Every sentence you speak, Every image you hold in your mind, every feeling you nurture, sinks into the depth of your subconscious, and from there shapes your experience. That is why I suggest a simple practice with quiet power, one that can slowly change the climate of your inner world, creating for yourself a set of peace cards. Each card needs only one sentence, short, clear, and true. For example, I am supported, peace is growing in me. I am safe in the divine. I belong to the light, sacred order is working in me. You do not need to write many. You only need to write what is right. Choose the sentences that make your heart soften the moment you read them, the ones that open you, the ones that feel like a gentle breath, placing a hand on your shoulder, telling you that things will become clearer. When you have these cards, you give your mind new seeds, new images, a new direction. Because the subconscious does not distinguish between intentional words and careless words, it only listens and responds. It is like soil. Soil never asks why you plant a seed. It simply nurtures whatever you give it. If you plant worry, worry grows. If you plant peace, peace blossoms. Each morning choose one card and read it slowly, as if it is the promise you want to live with that day. Not reading to ask for something to happen, but reading to remind yourself of what has always been true. If you read it the right way without rushing or forcing, you will feel your inner space brighten a little. It does not need to be much. A little is enough. Because real change comes from gentle accumulation. But cards alone are not enough. You also need a habit that softens the mind at the end of the day. I call it the 3 moments of peace practice. Before sleeping, take a piece of paper and write down 3 small moments when peace touched you that day. It could be waking up and noticing you breathed a little deeper than usual. A quiet feeling as you stepped outside. A moment when you paused just in time before anxiety pulled you away. Many people think such moments are too small to matter. But these small things are the first stones rebuilding the bridge that leads you back to your inner home. When you recognize and record them, you are telling your subconscious that this is the direction you want to move in. And the subconscious will respond by expanding those moments the next day. I remember guiding a man named Jacob. He said he never had peace. I told him to open a notebook and write 3 things that helped him breathe a little easier that day. He said he had none. I asked him to think again. After a quiet moment, he said, "This morning I drank a cool glass of water and felt light for a second. This afternoon, while waiting at a traffic light, I saw a clear sky and felt my chest loosen. Tonight, my wife smiled at me and I felt a brief sense of peace." He wrote all 3 down, and from that day on, he began noticing peace more often. Not because his life changed, but because he began to notice what had always been there. When you write these moments, you are teaching your mind something important, that peace still exists. It was never lost. It was only hidden behind hurry and fear. Part of this practice trains you to place light on what is right instead of seeing only what is wrong. When you nurture awareness of peace, you give it room to grow. You are building for yourself a spiritual habit. And spiritual habits are what change the direction of a life. Many ask me whether a few cards and a few small notes can change anything significant. I always answer, a small seed does not know it is small. It only knows how to bloom, and when it blooms, it softens the entire garden. Your mind is the same. It does not need you to force it to be holy or strong. It only needs to be gently guided each day. Remember this. Peace does not come from effort, but from habits built in the right direction. When you plant the seeds consistently, you will find yourself changing without knowing when it began. You will feel lighter, softer, breathing deeper, reacting less and receiving more. That is healing. Quiet, unforced, unfolding like a flower. And it all begins with the very small things you do today, repeat tomorrow, and keep through the coming months. That is how you rebuild the foundation of your inner life. That is how you step from darkness into light. And that is how you return to your inner home with gentle steps. When I speak about spiritual equivalence, many imagine it as some mysterious idea meant only for those with deep spiritual lives. But in truth, spiritual equivalence is simply the inner picture you hold of what you want to become, what you want to live, what you want to feel. Nothing can appear in your life unless an inner image exists first. This law moves as gently as breath, yet as powerfully as gravity. And what keeps many people stuck is not that they lack desire, but that they only know what they do not want, not what the thing they truly want looks like in their mind. Imagine someone coming to me and saying, "I want peace." When I ask what peace looks like for them, they answer it means I will not be anxious anymore. But not anxious is not an image. It is only the shadow of the old. The mind cannot create a new reality through negation. It needs a clear picture to build with, not a list of things you want to avoid. If an architect asks you what kind of house you want, you cannot answer, "I do not want it leaking. I do not want it dark. I do not want it small." He needs to see the picture of the house you dream of. The light, the structure, the feeling when you walk inside. Your mind is also an architect. It cannot work with emptiness or with rejection. It needs an image. And that image is the spiritual equivalence. Many pray for health, but what they hold inside is only the picture of not being sick. Not sick is not health. Health is the feeling of lightness, joy, movement, natural ease. Not sick is only an empty plot, not a garden. And gardens grow only when seeds are planted. I remember a man named Michael. He said he wanted clarity in his work, but when I asked what clarity looked like, he only said, "I do not want to feel confused anymore." I told him that was not an image, it was only the resistance to what he currently felt. And a resisting mind cannot create direction. I asked him to describe an ideal workday if he were completely clear. He hesitated. Then slowly, he said he wanted to feel ease when he opened his computer, to know which task to begin with, to walk into meetings with steadiness, and to end the day with the feeling, "I have moved forward." That was the first time he began creating a real image. As that image grew clearer, his life slowly grew clearer too. Not because circumstances changed first, but because he changed the way he saw. The mind needs an image to know where it is going. Without spiritual equivalence, it repeats the old. Without an inner blueprint, it relies on memory and habit. And memory is tied to fear. Habit is tied to avoidance. So if you truly want peace, you must have a picture of peace. If you want direction, you must have a picture of direction. If you want meaning, you must have a picture of what a meaningful day feels like. I want you to know that spiritual equivalence is not wishful fantasy. It is preparation for spiritual law to operate. When you have the right image, you are opening the door. You are creating the mold that life fills. You do not force it to happen. You make space for it to happen. Remember this. The mind does not step into a blank. It steps into an image. So I want you to pause and ask yourself 3 questions. 1. What do I truly want? 2. What does that look like in an ordinary day of my life? 3. What feeling arises when I picture it? If your answers are only things you do not want, you are not ready yet. You are running from the old instead of stepping into the new. But when you begin to describe what you want with honesty, without exaggeration, simply in a way that matches the rhythm of your life, that is when spiritual equivalence begins to form. I have watched entire lives change from this point. A woman who feared communication created spiritual equivalence by picturing herself simply smiling and offering a gentle greeting each morning. A man who feared failure created spiritual equivalence by picturing himself standing steady in a difficult moment and breathing instead of collapsing. These images were not dramatic or grand, but they were real. And the real is the soil that nourishes the new. Spiritual equivalence does not need to be beautiful. It only needs to be true. True to the reality of your soul. True to the level you are able to believe. True to the light waiting to rise inside you. You cannot desire peace while only picturing chaos. You cannot desire strength while only picturing collapse. You cannot desire openness while only imagining hurt. The mind follows the direction it looks, and that direction is the spiritual equivalence you are nurturing. So before life changes, let the image within you change first. There is no need for hurry, no need for grandeur, only truth, only clarity. And once spiritual equivalence forms, you will feel something very gentle but very real, the pull of the new. It does not demand effort. It only invites you to step in. And when you step in, life follows. When you understand that the mind needs a clear image to lead the way, the natural next step is to choose for yourself a full and grounded day and write it down as if you are handing your consciousness the blueprint of your own life. This is not fantasy and not wishful dreaming. It is the gentle shaping of awareness. Anything that has not been formed within you first has no place to appear outside you. The spiritual equivalence you create through this writing is how you loosen the soil plant, the seed, and make room for sacred order to do the rest. I want you to see this clearly. You do not write to pull anything toward you. You do not write to control life. You write to clarify what you want to live, to give your mind a direction, to let your heart know that a good path is already waiting for you. And when you write with honesty, without exaggeration, the blueprint becomes a quiet but powerful declaration. I am ready to live this. Begin by picturing an ideal morning if you were completely peaceful and steady. Do not turn it into something grand. Keep it close to the life you have now, just lighter, softer, more ordered. Perhaps you open your eyes and notice your breath entering more easily than usual. Your mind does not run ahead, demanding that every problem be solved at once. You place your feet on the floor and feel your body gently support you. You walk to the window and the morning light touches you like a greeting. Write that down. Write that you begin the day with a deep and grateful breath. Write that for a few seconds you feel the presence that carries you. Write that you are unrushed. Write that you enter the day with a quiet clarity. Next, write about the key moments of your day. If work often brings pressure, picture how you step into it from this new state. Do not imagine everything going smoothly. The important part is the image of you. Write that you work with gentle focus, not tension. That when someone says something unpleasant, you are still able to breathe. That you feel yourself standing inside your center instead of being swept away. That you know what to tend to and what to release. You may write that at midday you sit for 1 minute, close your eyes, and remind yourself that the divine is guiding you. You do not do this as a ritual but as a breath. And in that breath you feel your inner being return to alignment. Then picture a conversation. Choose a situation that usually makes you tense. But in this blueprint you see yourself replying with softness, listening more deeply, not overprotecting yourself. Not because the situation changed, but because you did. You do not respond from fear. You respond from presence. You do not try to win. You only try to keep peace. Next, write about the afternoon. You finish your work without letting pressure or self-judgment cling to you. You feel a quiet lightness even if tasks remain unfinished, because you know your value is not measured by your checklist, but by the awareness you carried through the day. Finally, write the evening. You return to stillness. You sit down for a moment to look back at your day. No judgment, no demand, only observation. You see moments you stood firm and moments you were pulled away. You see all of it with kindness. You know you are learning. You know you are growing. You know the light in you is rising day by day. You end the day with gratitude, not because everything was perfect, but because you took one more step in your return to the inner home. When you write this blueprint, do not try to make it beautiful. Do not try to make it extraordinary. Let it be real, close, reachable. Truthfulness is what allows spiritual equivalence to take root, and after writing it, read it each morning. Not as a request, not as a command, but as someone looking into a mirror that reflects their true nature. You read to remember. You read to align. You read to invite your mind into what you have chosen. But there is something important to remember. You must let this blueprint live. Do not rush it. Do not check constantly to see if results have arrived. Do not pull the seed out of the soil to see if it has sprouted. Let it rest in the ground in the quiet of the subconscious, where spiritual law works without your interference. If at times you feel you are not walking in the right direction, breathe. Look back at the blueprint and remember that a full day is not a day without challenges. It is a day where you remain close to your true nature. When you stay faithful to this practice, you will begin to feel something very soft but very real. It is the sense that life is opening a door you did not see before. And that door does not open from the outside. It opens from within you. On the journey back to peace, there is a doorway almost everyone tries to avoid, yet no one can truly walk around it. It is the doorway of forgiveness. I have seen countless souls meditate, pray, affirm, journal, seek meaning, but only when they touch forgiveness does life begin to turn toward the light. Because no peace can take root in a heart still tied to wounds that have never been seen clearly. Forgiveness is not a noble gesture. It is the cleansing of the soul. Just as the body needs water to wash away dust, the soul needs forgiveness to loosen the knots within. And just as water does not ask whose fault it is, forgiveness does not need logic. It only needs willingness. I once met Mark, a 42-year-old man living under the weight of work and family responsibilities. He told me he always felt a tightness in his chest, as if an invisible cord pulled him back every time he tried to step into a new day. He tried everything from exercise to therapy, yet the cord remained. One day I asked him if there was something from his past he had never faced. He stayed quiet for a long time and said, "Yes, my father." He said nothing more, but the silence carried a decade of unspoken pain. Throughout his childhood, he felt unseen by his father, emotionally abandoned. And though he believed he had moved on, the wound had never been released. It had only been buried, and from that hidden place it shaped his breath, his heartbeat, and the way he saw life. I told him forgiveness does not mean agreeing with what happened. It does not mean forgetting. It is simply giving the soul back to itself and cutting the cord that ties it to a moment long gone. Every time you remember a wound without forgiving, you pull the past into the present and place it on your shoulders again. That is why many people feel tired even after sleeping well, tense even when nothing is wrong. They are carrying burdens that no longer belong to the present. I invited Mark to do a simple exercise. I told him to take paper and write everything he had never said to his father. He wrote in silence. The first lines were slow, then they came faster. Anger, disappointment, and pain poured onto the page. When he finished, I asked him to read it again, not with rage, but like someone looking at a wound that needs cleaning. Then I told him to burn the paper. When it folded into ash, he did not cry, but his breath changed. I saw his shoulders drop for the first time since he walked into the room. Forgiveness works like that. It does not begin with a pleasant feeling. It does not arrive like a bright beam of light. It often appears as the first soft breath after years of living in heaviness. Forgiveness is unclogging. It is the choice to stop retelling the old story. It is the choice to stop replaying the scene of hurt in your mind every day. It is the choice to stop using the wound to define who you are. Many ask me, how can I forgive if the other person never apologizes? I always answer, forgiveness is not a gift you give them. It is a gift you give yourself. It is the moment you remove the grip of pain. When you refuse to forgive, you force your mind to repeat the memory, to hold the old picture, to carry the heavy vibration. You live with that memory every day without realizing it. But when you forgive, you do not erase the memory, you simply reclaim your freedom. Forgiveness does not require beautiful emotion. It only requires decision. You can say, "I do not feel forgiving yet, but I choose to forgive." Emotion will follow decision, just as a heavy door moves first by a small push and then opens more easily each time. The practice I want you to do today is simple but true. Write a letter you will not send. Write with complete honesty. No need for beautiful words, only truth. Let everything you have held inside come into the light. Then read it again with the heart, not with anger. And after reading, say gently, "I return to you what is yours, I keep what is mine." You walk your path, I walk mine. I release you. When you whisper that, even if your voice is faint, something in you begins to loosen a knot that has been there for years. You do not need to force yourself to feel anything. You only need to allow the process. Forgiveness does not happen in 1 minute. It happens each time you choose release. And one more thing. If you can whisper this about the one who hurt you, "I wish you peace." Not so they change, but so your heart stops holding their image in darkness. When you bless another soul, you open the door for yourself to step into the light. Now I want to ask you something gentle but important. Is there someone in your life whose name makes your heart tighten even now? If there is, let me know with a small response. That answer is not for me. It is for you. It is the sign that you have arrived at the doorway of healing, and you are ready to open it. On the spiritual journey, there is one thing most people understand slowly: that truth does not waver, only human emotion wavers. And it is the confusion between these two that causes many souls to lose their peace at the very moment they are closest to transformation. I have seen many walk well in the beginning, holding light, holding direction, holding faith, and then when the body reacts with an old signal or when life stirs with some sudden disruption, they believe everything they have built has collapsed. But truth never collapses, only perception shakes. Spiritual law does not change because you are having a difficult day. I have told many people that signs of turbulence are not signs of failure. They are simply the last movements of the old process leaving you. When light begins to rise, the dark corners that were once quiet begin to stir. Not to harm you, but to depart. Every healing has a moment when the old mechanism resists. The body has memory. The mind has habit. The subconscious has inertia. When you bring in light, everything that used to survive in the quiet of darkness tries to hold its place. But you must not mistake that stirring for the return of what is old. It is only the reaction before it dissolves. I remember a man named Andrew working in the fast world of technology. When he began inner practice, he felt peace arrive quickly. But a week later, he slipped into his old tension. He believed he had failed. He said he had returned to the starting point. I looked at him and said, "No, you have not gone back. You have reached the second layer of truth. The first layer is the light you feel. The second layer is the darkness leaving you. Your body is not betraying you. It is pushing out what no longer belongs. What you need in moments like this is not panic, not self-blame, not doubt. What you need is steadiness. Steadiness is not forcing yourself to be strong. Steadiness is standing still in truth, even when emotion is shouting something else. Steadiness means you do not rush to name a new experience by an old memory. It means you do not let one small wave make you forget that the ocean is still there. When you say to yourself, "I stand in the divine," and the divine does not waver, you are reminding your mind that truth does not live in the movement of emotion. Turbulence is not the voice of truth. Turbulence is only the echo of what is leaving. And you do not need to fight those echoes. You only need to breathe and pass through them. When a wave rises, a skilled swimmer does not panic. They dip gently beneath the wave, and the wave passes. You can do the same. Picture this: a heavy train moving at great speed. When the driver wants to change direction, the train cannot turn instantly. It needs time to slow down, adjust its force shift to another track. Your mind is the same. When you have spent years living in fear, anxiety, reactive patterns, tightness in the body, you have been like that train running on a familiar track. When you begin to shift direction through spiritual practice, the train begins to slow. And as it slows, you may feel shaking. But shaking is not proof you are wrong. It is proof you are changing tracks. You must remember this whenever turbulence arises. Truth is never threatened. Only familiarity is threatened, and familiarity will call out to pull you back. But if you stand firm in truth, that call becomes faint. Spiritual law always stands with you even when emotion does not. And you must choose to stand with the law, not with the emotion. One of the strongest practices in this period of turbulence is reminding yourself, I do not judge my progress by today's emotion. I judge by truth. And the truth is that I am being guided. When you repeat this, the mind stops tearing you in two. It learns that emotion is only the weather of a day, not the climate of your spiritual life. Weather changes. The sun remains. Do not forget this. Another time, I guided a woman named Caroline who had lived through many kinds of emotional wounds. When she began her practice, she felt lightness for 2 weeks, breathing deeper, thinking clearer. But one night, her old memories rose like a storm. She panicked, thinking she was moving backward. I told her she was not going backward. She was seeing the last edges of the old layer. When the light grows stronger, the shadows in the corners appear before they are erased. She did not want to see them, but seeing is part of clearing. When she understood this, her fear softened. Her body released. And a week later, the lightness returned deeper than before. This is the law. Turbulence is the sign of transformation, not failure. And steadiness is the bridge that carries you through. Not steadiness by effort, but steadiness by awareness. Steadiness by choosing truth each time the old calls your name. When you stay steady, you send a clear signal into the subconscious that you no longer belong to that dark terrain. And the subconscious, like a faithful gardener, begins to clean the soil so the new seed can bloom. Remember this. Even on the days you feel heavy, old, or lost, the light has not disappeared. The light of the divine never leaves you. All you need is to return, to stand in truth, to remember that turbulence is only a wave. And waves always fade. One of the greatest misunderstandings of the modern mind is the belief that health, peace, work, finances, and relationships are separate compartments. People try to heal the body without touching the wounds in their emotions. They seek peace while speaking words that disturb the mind. They pray for health yet live in constant tension with family or in daily fear of not having enough. And then they wonder why they cannot step into complete peace. But the soul is not divided into sections. You cannot live in disharmony in one area and expect the others to remain stable. Spiritual law does not work that way. The law works as a whole. Whatever happens inside you will echo into every part of your life like ripples on water from a single stone. I have seen people pursue health in every possible way and still not improve, not because their bodies lacked the ability to heal, but because inside they carried resentment in their relationships. I have seen people meditate to ease anxiety, yet live each day in conflict with coworkers, family, or themselves. When inner disharmony dominates, it will express itself through any channel it can. Sometimes as exhaustion, sometimes as sleeplessness, sometimes as irritation without reason. Outer disorder is always the echo of inner disorder. Remember this clearly: peace is not a moment. It is a structure. And that structure is built on the sacred order of your soul. When you are harmonious within, life around you begins to move toward harmony. Not because you control every situation, but because you are giving off a vibration that carries order. And order always attracts order. I remember a woman named Julia. She came to me because of constant headaches and exhaustion, even though her medical tests showed nothing serious. She told me she tried very hard to stay positive, that she read books, meditated, journaled. But after a short conversation, I could see the cause was not in her body. It was in the tension she lived with every day in her marriage. They lived comfortably, but every conversation was filled with criticism and subtle hostility. Julia said she had grown used to it, that it no longer hurt her. But the body never grows used to tension. It only stores it quietly and expresses it through symptoms. I told Julia she did not need to change her husband. What she needed to change was the inner position she stood in whenever tension rose. I taught her a simple affirmation: I choose to stand in the peace of the divine, not in the old fear within me. She repeated it for a week, and the first thing that changed was not her husband but her own voice. It softened. Then her body began to release. Her headaches faded, not because the outside world shifted, but because her inner vibration changed direction. That is the principle. You do not need to fix everything in your life. You only need to fix the inner place you live from. When the soul is steady, the body, the work, the finances, the relationships slowly align. Another man, Ethan, once told me he constantly feared for his finances. Even with stable income, he lived in the feeling of lack. That fear made him tense, overworked, and disconnected from himself. The issue was not money. It was that he lived as if the divine could not care for him. He placed himself outside the flow of sacred provision. I told him that spiritual law cannot pour into a mind living in fear. Not because the divine withholds, but because fear closes the channel. When you believe you are always lacking, you close the door. When you believe sacred order is working, you open it. Opening is not wishful thinking. It is recognizing that your source is not your salary, not the market, but the divine. Ethan began practicing the affirmation, sacred provision always opens my path. Within 2 months, the change was not in his money, but in his posture toward life. He worked with calmness. He no longer rushed or tried to prove his worth. And in that peace, new opportunities arrived as naturally as breath. Remember this: if you want health but hold anger in your heart, the body must carry the weight. If you want peace but live in sharp words and chaos, peace cannot take root. If you want provision but speak the language of lack, spiritual law can only reflect what you believe. Everything is connected. Everything is one. The harmony of the soul is the foundation for all other harmony. That is why in this part, I want you to begin a simple but powerful practice. Each night before sleep, place your hand on your chest and whisper, I choose harmony. Harmony in my words. Harmony in my thoughts. Harmony in my relationships. Harmony in the way I face work and finances. I choose harmony, and my body answers with peace. You do not need to change everything in a day. You only need to begin with a declaration. That declaration smooths the path in front of you. And now, as the structure invites, I ask you to interact with me with a small sign. If what you just heard touched you, if you want to step deeper into this harmony, leave a comment or simply write, I am ready to change. I want to know you are here walking this journey with me. When a soul first touches inner peace, it often believes the journey is complete. But in truth, that is only the beginning. Peace is not a moment. Peace is a way of living. It does not sustain itself simply because you touched it once. It must be nourished every day, like a flame that needs shelter and wood, like a garden that needs light and gentle care. And the beautiful thing is that when you learn to maintain peace, you do not hold it only for yourself. You begin to radiate it, not through grand words, but through the way you stand in the world. Years ago, when I guided a small group of people seeking healing, I noticed a common pattern. Anyone can find a little peace in silence and focus. But the true work is not touching peace. It is keeping peace in the complexity of daily life. Keeping peace on an easy day is not difficult. But keeping peace as you face challenge, tense conversations, unsettling news, heavy responsibility, that is the art. And this art is not a talent. It is a gentle but steady training of the mind. I told them that an illuminated mind is not a mind without thoughts. It is a mind that knows how to return to its center each time it is pulled away. Like a rower who may drift, but always adjusts the direction, peace does not lie in never wavering. Peace lies in the ability to return quickly, to return softly, to return, knowing the divine remains present, no matter what moves outside. One practice I want you to carry is the 3-beat pause. Whenever the mind begins to run, stop for a breath, pause for a moment, and remember that you are never required to react instantly. You always have a choice. Those 3 beats are a sacred gap, a small doorway through which light can enter. Do not underestimate them. Some have avoided conflict through those 3 beats. Some have protected their dignity. Some have regained their breath in moments they thought they would collapse. When you keep that pause alive, you are building a bridge to the deepest part of your soul. You no longer live by reaction. You live by presence. And presence over time becomes a habit. The mind learns to slow. The body learns to soften. The voice learns to be gentle. Even the way you see others changes. You no longer see them through fear or judgment, but as souls also trying to find their way home. Through the years, I noticed something beautiful. When a person truly enters their inner light, they do not become distant or detached as many imagine. They become more connected. They become someone others seek out not for advice, but because their presence brings calm. They do not need many words. Their being changes the atmosphere. Because peace is a force. It spreads. The peace in others. And that is when you step into a very beautiful part of the journey service. Service here does not mean burden, self-sacrifice, or living for others while forgetting yourself. Service means allowing your inner light to walk into the world. It means letting your peace become a place others can stand in for a moment when they are tired. It means letting your light touch the darkness in them without judgment or explanation. A person who is suffering does not need you to fix them. They need you to see their strength, even when they have forgotten it. A person who is hopeless does not need you to prove that everything will be fine. They need you to hold an image of them in light when they can only see shadow. And the beauty is, you do not need to force this. When you truly maintain peace, you become an open doorway. Anyone who walks near you feels their own mind soften. I once guided a woman named Helen. She was not outspoken and never wanted to be the center of attention. But after a period of inner practice, she became a gentle anchor for her whole family. Not because she solved their problems, but because when she was in the room, everyone instinctively spoke softer, listened more, defended less. Helen did not try to do this. Her light did it. That is service. You will enter that phase too, not through effort, but through the natural unfolding of a soul that has found its place. When you stand in that place, you no longer need to prove your worth. You do not need dramatic acts of goodness to feel enough. You only need to live true to your inner peace, and that peace will spread like the quiet fragrance of a flower. But for all of this to continue, you must tend the flame. Not with fear that it may go out, but with gentle care. 1 minute of morning stillness. 1 well-chosen affirmation. 1 deep breath midday. 1 small moment of gratitude before sleep. These are the logs for the fire. These are the waters for the garden of the soul. These are the ways you remind your soul that it matters. Remember, you do not become light by trying to be bright. You become light by releasing what makes you dim. Those things are fear, judgment, resentment, haste. As you loosen them, little by little, the light reveals itself. because it has always been in you. And one day, when you look back, you will realize the journey never ended at peace. Peace was only the gate. Beyond that gate are gentleness, clarity, connection, and eventually effortless service. You become one who carries light without trying to become anything at all. One thing I learned very early on the healing path is that the soul cannot bloom in disorder. Not because disorder is bad, but because it consumes so much inner energy that you no longer have space to feel the guidance of the divine. Inner order is the foundation of all peace. And it almost never begins with something big. It begins with small things, very small things, so small that most people overlook them. Yet those small things create the entire climate of the soul. I have observed thousands of people over the decades and discovered a rule with almost no exceptions. The outer life reflects with honesty whatever is happening inside. A cluttered room often accompanies a mind that has lost direction. A drawer full of things no longer needed often mirrors a soul still holding old memories. A packed schedule is usually the sign of a heart that does not want to sit with itself. And when someone begins to clear their physical space, something strange happens. Their mind begins to clear as well. It is not because objects have mysterious power, but because clearing is a physical expression of an inner decision, the decision to choose order over confusion, clarity over heaviness, lightness over burden. And each such decision opens a small doorway for light to enter. I remember a woman named Olivia who lived in a home filled with objects from seasons of life she no longer wanted to revisit. She came to me because of a heaviness she could not explain, even though her work and family were fine. I asked her about her home, and she admitted she avoided opening some drawers because they held remnants of old sadness. I told her to spend one afternoon clearing just one drawer, not to make it pretty, but to release part of her soul from images that had held her for too long. 3 days later, she returned and said that simply opening that drawer made her breathe deeper. No miracle happened. She just released one old layer, and in the empty space that remained, peace appeared. Clearing is not a physical act. Clearing is a spiritual language. When you remove what no longer belongs to you, you tell the universe that you are ready for the new. You tell yourself that you do not need to carry memories that no longer hold meaning. You lighten your load so the soul can breathe again. But clearing is not only about space. It is also about habits. Many people live in schedules that drain them but believe it is the only way to survive. They forget that simplicity is not poverty. Simplicity is the strength of a quiet mind. When you simplify, you reclaim the right to choose what matters. And when you choose what truly matters, you free the energy that the divine uses to work within you. We often think that doing more gives us more control. But the truth is the opposite. When you do too much, you stop hearing the whisper of intuition. You run, you solve, you rush, but you no longer live from the center. And without the center, there is no peace. I once told a busy man named Daniel that if he spent 5 minutes each morning sitting in stillness, he would accomplish more in his day. He did not believe me, but he tried. After 2 weeks, he realized that the mental clarity from those 5 minutes kept him from making hurried mistakes. Simplicity opened a form of efficiency that effort could never create. A key part of inner order is honesty in words. I have heard many people say they are exhausted from work, yet they never set a boundary. Exhaustion does not come from action. It comes from living against your truth. When you say yes while your heart means no, you create a crack inside. When those cracks multiply, the soul becomes tired before the body does. That is why one of the most powerful spiritual actions you can take is to live honestly with your own rhythm. Not honesty as harshness, but honesty as gentleness, saying what needs to be said, keeping what needs to be kept, and refusing to do what betrays your nature. Honesty in speech is order in the soul. And then comes a deeper clearing beliefs. Some beliefs you carry from childhood are like broken pieces of glass. They distort your image of yourself. You believe you must be perfect to be loved. You believe you must be strong to avoid being hurt. You believe life always demands struggle. These beliefs no longer serve you. They are old luggage. You do not need to take them with you. When you release a false belief, you drop a stone from your spiritual backpack, and only when you are lighter can you go farther. Everything I am saying leads to one truth. Inner order creates outer order. A tidy soul sees life more clearly. A simple mind sees the path more easily. A light heart feels the world soften. You do not need to do everything in one day. You only need to begin with something small. Clear one drawer. Rearrange your desk. Release one old habit. Speak one word of honest truth. Let go of one belief that has weighed you down. Each small act is a message to the universe: I am ready to live in the order of light. And as you do this long enough, something quietly wondrous will happen. You will no longer try to hold peace. Peace will come to you because you have created a place for it to stay. When a soul begins to understand inner order, the next step is learning how to pray rightly. And when I say pray, I do not mean long speeches, rituals, memorized lines, or anxious requests. I am speaking about the deepest, strongest, and simplest form of prayer, the kind that aligns you with the divine, a silent harmony between your mind and the source that sustains all things. True prayer is not asking. True prayer is recognizing. It is remembering. It is opening to the invisible strength that is already present. And this does not happen through loud pleas, but through a quiet breath. Very early in my journey, I realized that most people pray from fear. They ask to escape what they dread instead of recognizing the strength they already carry. But when prayer is born from fear, it only feeds fear. True prayer is prayer from truth, not from worry. It is entering the state in which you see as the divine sees, with order, with light, with spaciousness, not with panic. I once guided a young woman named Sophia, who said she prayed every night, yet never felt peace. When I asked how she prayed, she said she always begged for things not to get worse, begged that nothing bad would happen, begged not to collapse. I told her that all those requests pointed toward what she feared. She was focusing on the dark and hoping the light would appear. But light is not created by staring at the dark. Light appears when you turn toward the source of light. I taught her a new prayer, only one sentence: the divine is acting within me, and I am safe in that action. I told her not to ask for anything, only to repeat what is true. Not pushing, not striving, not hoping. Just recognizing. A week later, she returned and said that for the first time, she slept without being pulled into anxiety. Not because life changed, but because her center changed. True prayer works that way. It does not directly alter the outside world. It alters the world within, and the outside adjusts itself. True prayer does not change circumstances. It changes you. And you are the doorway through which circumstances are interpreted. When you stand in truth, everything seen through your eyes becomes clearer, lighter, and more ordered. There is a practice I want you to know called prayer as breath. No fixed time, no special place, only a few seconds to return. When your mind begins to race, pause and whisper, I am not in fear. I am in the divine. When your body tightens, place your hand on your chest and say, sacred life is moving through me. I choose peace. When a situation shakes, you close your eyes for a moment and say, sacred order is guiding me through this. These are not requests. They are declarations of where you are standing. Because the real question in every situation is not what is happening, but where am I standing inside what is happening. If you stand in fear, everything becomes heavy. If you stand in truth, everything becomes bright. Years ago, I spoke with a man named Lucas, who was often swept into sudden waves of anxiety. He said that when it arrived, he felt swallowed. I told him that is because you only know yourself as the wave. You forget you are the ocean. And I taught him a quiet prayer: the peace of the divine is wider than this feeling. I choose to stand in that peace. At first he said it only in panic, but gradually he said it in ordinary moments too. And with time the anxiety no longer carried him away. Not because he became stronger, but because he stood in the right place. True prayer does not create strength. It opens the door for the strength already within you. It does not create peace. It removes what blocks peace. When you pray rightly, you hand your mind to a force greater than yourself, and that force never trembles. Remember, the most powerful prayer is not the longest one. It is the one that brings you back to truth. Sometimes it is only a sentence, "I am in the divine." Sometimes only a quiet breath. Sometimes only one moment of stillness. As long as you return, everything begins to change. And when prayer becomes breath, you will notice that you no longer pray to escape anything. You pray to stand steady within it. You do not pray for life to be smooth. You pray for your mind to be clear enough to see order even in what seems chaotic. And the wonder is that when you stand in that place, circumstances often shift in the gentlest way. Before we close this part, I want to ask you something. Have you prayed from fear more often than from truth? If you see yourself in that question, leave me a small sign, so I know you are here listening and ready to step into a new way of praying, the way of light rather than the way of fear. When a soul has walked a long stretch on the path back to peace, there is often a special phase that many are not prepared for: the final test. This is not punishment. It is not a sign you have taken a wrong turn. It is simply the natural response of the old layers that have lived in you for so long, trying to hold their place when the new light begins to take shape. I often tell people that the spiritual journey is like the moment just before sunrise. Right before the sun appears, the sky can look a little darker. Not because the darkness grows stronger, but because your eyes are adjusting to welcome the light. I have seen countless people who felt deep peace for weeks or months, only to suddenly face an uncomfortable wave: anxiety, returning fatigue, resurfacing an old conflict appearing, or a sense of emptiness rising from nowhere. And they think they have failed. But no, these are what I call the final echoes of the dark. Darkness does not leave in silence. It leaves in echoes. And those echoes have no power unless you grant them power. In the days right before a deep shift, the mind often brings back thoughts you believed you had released. But they return not to stay. They return to be seen one last time, accepted and let go. True healing never skips a layer. It goes back to gather the remnants, like a gardener returning to pick up the last fallen leaves after a long season. I remember a man named Jonathan who practiced everything I taught with sincerity. He said that for 3 weeks he felt a calm he had never known. But in the 4th week he suddenly felt heavy, hollow, as if something precious had been lost. He was afraid his peace had vanished. I looked at him and said, "No, Jonathan, your peace has not left. Only the darkness is leaving you, and you are feeling its final footsteps." Indeed, a few days later, the heaviness dissolved, and his peace was deeper than before. Not because something new arrived, but because something old had gone. And for the old to go, it must first be seen. We cannot release what we have not recognized. This is a principle. Few people are patient enough to understand every step forward creates a backward pull. Like when you push a heavy door, the moment right before it opens fully is the moment of greatest resistance. Not because the door rejects you, but because of natural momentum. With one more gentle push, it opens. The spiritual life works the same way. During the final test, what matters most is not how you feel, but where inside you choose to stand. You may feel slow or unsettled, but do not measure your progress by emotion. Emotion is weather. Truth is climate. Weather changes daily. Climate does not. The presence of the divine in you is climate steady, unmoved, untouched by a single gray day. When the test comes, you do not need to fight. Fighting gives strength to what you want to rise above. You only need to breathe and say softly but firmly, I am not going back to the old path. This is not a promise. It is a recognition. When you say it, you close a door that once felt familiar but no longer belongs to you. The final test always serves two purposes. First, to show you whether you stand firmly in truth, not as judgment but as clarity. Second, to help you realize that the peace you now have is no longer a passing feeling. It has become part of you. What belongs to you cannot be taken by a single difficult day. The old mind may throw doubt. The old body may pull up memories. But now you have light to recognize them. And recognition is the key. You no longer identify with those waves. You no longer call them I. You see them as things leaving you. That small shift is the entire transformation. I often tell people going through this phase to practice something simple. When emotion rises sharply, place your hand on your heart and whisper, whatever I feel, the truth does not change. That sentence is an anchor. Not an anchor to drag you back, but an anchor that helps you stand in the light while the winds blow. And if you stand long enough, the winds settle. Another thing to remember is this: in the final test, do not rush to analyze. Analysis gives more life to what you are trying to release. Choose silent awareness instead. Feel without explaining. Observe without interpreting. That is how you allow darkness to pass without holding it in place with your attention. And finally, trust that after every true test, the soul opens a new space. A lightness you have never felt. A clarity you do not need to maintain. A peace that flows like water finding its natural path. Many fear this phase because they think they are losing something precious. But no, you lose nothing. You are simply being cleansed one last time before entering a higher, wider, and more honest peace. Be gentle with yourself in this time. You are passing through the last part of the old, and the last part of the old is always the loudest before it goes quiet. When I look back at the journey you and I have walked through, all the previous parts, I see something deeply important. Everything I have ever shared with you about peace, order, release, the power of words, right prayer, and the final test, all point to one truth: you are not alone. Not for a single moment has the divine stepped away from the temple chosen for its dwelling. And that temple is you. Many wander far, only to return to the place where they stood from the beginning. They believe peace is somewhere distant, that guidance lies in complexity, that healing is reserved for a select few. But that is only the fog of forgetting. When the fog clears, what remains is a truth so simple, it softens the heart. Peace is here in every breath, in every small decision, in every moment you pause long enough to hear the whisper of your own soul. I have met people who went through storms so heavy they feared they would never rise again. But when I looked into their eyes, I did not see brokenness. I saw a light waiting to be awakened. Every soul carries a flame stronger than its trials, and sometimes the trials are what make the flame visible. Darkness never comes to destroy you. It comes to remind you that you can shine. In this final part, I want you to understand that your journey does not end here. This is only the doorway into a new way of living, a way not built on fear, not built on defense, not built on trying to control every outcome, but on trust that you are being guided. And when you trust that guidance, every step becomes lighter. You have learned how to pause when your mind runs. You have learned how to speak gently to your body instead of blaming it. You have learned how to release beliefs that no longer serve you. You have learned to place the divine first, not as a religious idea, but as an inner order that allows you to see life with wider eyes. And now what you need is not to remember every lesson. What you need is simply to move more slowly, so each lesson can quietly soak into your living. Spiritual truths are like seed. You cannot force them to bloom. You only tend the soil with stillness, with honesty, with a few minutes of prayer each day with kind words. The seeds will choose their own moment to rise into your awareness. There is something I want you to carry with you. You do not become strong by tightening yourself. You become strong by remembering that you do not walk this path alone. The guidance of the divine is always there, like the hidden stream that feeds the roots of a tree. You do not see it yet. It is what keeps the tree standing. And when you know you have that source, you no longer need to hold the world up with your bare hands. Many believe peace is the reward that comes after everything settles. But peace is the foundation that allows everything to find its right place. When you are peaceful, first, the circumstances learn from you. When you are clear, the situations grow clearer. When you place order in your mind, order begins to appear in your life. This is an unchanging law. I remember a man who came to me in despair. He had lost his direction, his job, and his faith in himself. His voice trembled as he spoke. But when I listened, I did not hear collapse. I heard his soul calling him home, calling him back to where he had forgotten to stand, to truth, to guidance, to unconditional peace. I told him everything you seek is waiting for you at the center of yourself. Months later, when his life opened again and he found his strength, he said the moment that changed him was not advice, but realizing he had never been abandoned. No one is abandoned. No one is cut off from the light. There are only those who forget and then remember. And remembering is the entire journey. So in this final part, I want you to practice something simple. Each morning before the world touches you, place your hand on your heart and whisper, "Today, I walk with guidance." Expect nothing. Try to feel nothing. Just say it. A sentence as light as breath. But if repeated daily, it will change the way you move through life. And at night, before sleep, softly say, "I release this day. I rest in the light." That sentence returns your mind to its true place, not a place of burden, but of trust. When you live this way, life will stop feeling like resistance. It becomes a companion. It reflects your state. And if you hold peace within you, will see peace in everything around you. Keep walking. Walk gently. Trust the light that is working in you even when you cannot see results. That light never stops. It does not need noise to prove its presence. It only needs your agreement, even a very small one. And when you agree, the whole universe moves to guide you into the right direction.